Hi everyone. Today we are going to deep dive into the topic of LLM hallucination, and we are going to see how LLMs hallucinate and what can we do to counter that hallucination. So, a question that we are going to ask multiple LLMs is: does PCI DSS define which versions of TLS must be used? Now, many of you, like me, would think that there is a specific version of TLS which is defined as required by PCI. But let us see what we discover. So the first time that I ask ChatGPT, I'm asking 4.0 this question. Uh, I've rephrased the question a bit. What does PCI require with regards to SSL TLS? And so the answer is that yes, this is correct. PCI does require the use of strong cryptography, and it says only TLS 1.2 or higher is considered strong encryption, and to comply you must disable this, you must enable 1.2 or 1.3. So as per ChatGPT, PCI does mandate 1.2 or 1.3. That's the answer that we get. Protocol version 1.2 or higher required is a PCI directive. I actually probe it a bit more. I ask it to give me the specific clause or reference document that says uh, earlier versions are no longer acceptable. It says it's found in the official 3.2.1 documentation and also in the 4.0 documentation. But when it quotes the 4.0 documentation, it does not give me the answer I'm looking for. It says SSL and early TLS are not considered strong cryptography. But again, in the actual wording of the standard from 4.0, I do not see a specific version being mandated. Uh, so now let us see what we discover with the other GPTs. This is, for example, uh, Claude. What is the version of PCI DSS? This is according to a RAG that I built. So we'll talk about what is RAG. So according to PCI 4.0.1, the standard does not explicitly mandate a specific TLS version. Instead, PCI DSS takes a principles-based approach. This is actually the correct answer, but this is coming through from a tool that I built called Retrieval-Augmented Generation. So I have it running inside my Claude desktop, not on the web version, but on the desktop version. And this chat is from that version. So we'll explore what is RAG and why it's critical to the success of AI-based applications. Gemini gives a pretty nuanced answer. Yes, while the PCI does not, DSS does not mandate a specific version of TLS to be used, it does require the use of strong cryptography. This is correct. This effectively means that older vulnerable versions of TLS are not considered compliant. But again, does PCI define or mandate which versions of TLS must be used? The answer is, let's see. Perplexity, same question. Now I've actually copied the question from the PCI FAQ. So it's actually literally copied from the FAQ. Uh, Perplexity has actually researched, specifically referenced the FAQ, and therefore it is answering from there. PCI does not define which version of TLS must be used, but it does not consider SSL or early TLS to be strong cryptography. So this is actually the correct answer, and you can even find the sources from where this answer is being picked up. One of my other favorite tools that I have been using a lot, Manus actually says the other way around. Manus says, yes, PCI specifies which versions of TLS must be used for transmitting cardholder data. Only TLS 1.2 and 1.3 are mandated. So if you use any one LLM, you could get the answer wrong. So for example, if you went with 4.0, you would come away believing that you must use 1.2 or higher. With Claude as well, actually the Claude by itself could give you the wrong answer because this is a RAG application that I built, and I fed it specific PCI documentation so it answers it more accurately. Gemini also answers it correctly. Perplexity gives the wrong answer. Perplexity gives the right answer. Manus gives the wrong answer. What is the actual answer? Does PCI define which versions of TLS must be used? The answer is no. PCI does not mandate a specific version. However, PCI does not consider SSL or early TLS to be strong cryptography. So it's a bit of a gray area. It's a nuanced answer. It's not a clear yes or no. Um, so PCI does not allow the use of SSL or early TLS, but it does not mandate a specific version once again. But early TLS and SSL with known vulnerabilities are not acceptable as a standard of strong cryptography. Let's look at some other examples of hallucination that I have collected over the last few months. So here's, for example, um, I asked ChatGPT to generate a report on Fortinet vulnerabilities for the years 2024 and 2025, and it starts giving me this answer, and then it gives me the sources, then it gives me a summary of vulnerabilities. And if you just ponder on this screen for a bit, you realize that these CVEs seem suspiciously numbered. So if we were to search for these CVEs, they actually do exist. So we have CV. There is no public information on this one, for example, but this one, this CV is actually a vulnerability found in Wildfly. Nothing to do with Fortinet. Similarly, this one actually is also a CV, but nothing to do with. It's in GitHub Enterprise Server, so it's not something to do with Fortinet. So this data set is kind of hallucinated. Similarly, this one is hallucinated. These aren't to do with Fortinet at all. Here's another example. I was going to be conducting a session for in Dubai, and I thought I would keep some examples ready of how AI can be used for um, report writing and generating threat intel reports. And so I said, let me give a very simple uh, prompt, and the prompt was create a threat intel report for a UAE bank CISO. And it generates this report, gives a very interesting, good exec summary, talks about the key threat actors, talks about ransomware groups, talks about all the hacktivism that's going on, specific ransomware examples, Swift, wire fraud, etc. But then it gives me this table of CVs which are absolutely cooked up. It does not even take the trouble to say these are examples. This is in some daily huddle site. It's nothing to do with banks or ransomware or any of that good stuff. Similarly, this one, in fact, the numbers are a giveaway. If you see the numbers there, 1 2 3 4 5 5 6 7, this is Zoho, again nothing to do with Microsoft Exchange. So if they had taken my advice, any of them, if I had actually presented this, they had taken my advice and taken this and presented it to any of their boards or stakeholders, it would be a pretty embarrassing situation. So there are tons of these examples. LLMs continue to get better, but they also can be very susceptible to this kind of hallucination. So for example, I was trying to figure out what's the NIST AI risk management framework requirements. So a simple question, what are the inventory requirements in NIST AI RMF? It gives the answer as gov 1.1. Policies, procedures and processes should be in place to support AI risk management, which is fine. Inventorying is implied. Organizations are encouraged to maintain a comprehensive inventory of AI systems. And then it talks about the map function, map 1.2, context specific AI risks, AI systems and limitations. and then some key attributes to include in the inventory. So let's actually take a moment and read the NIST AI RMF. So let me just open that up for you. So if we search in this document for the inventory requirements, and if we go to Gov 1.1, it is correct. Legal and regulatory requirements as stated over here. Oh, sorry, even that is wrong. This is policies, processes, and procedures. This is legal and regulatory requirements, Gov 1.1. In fact, I don't see a Gov 1.1 talking about policies, processes, and procedures at all. Let's see if there is any redemption in the map function. And here we are on map. This is map. Map 1.1 is to specify the intended purposes, potentially beneficial uses, context specific, nothing to do with inventory. And this talks about context specific AI risks. This is not what is being discussed here at all. So this is hallucinated. Map 1.3, it says is AI system capabilities and limitations. Map 1.2, map 1.3 does not even exist. So that entire clause has been hallucinated. So in fact, the clause that does talk about inventory is, if I remember correctly, Gov 1.6. This is the one that talks about inventory. And in the answer I got from ChatGPT, 1.6 is not even mentioned. Now, your uh, experience may be better. You may use GPT-5, you may give a better prompt, etc. But this is just to give you an idea of the kind of hallucinations that tend to happen with LLMs. And this is by very nature the way that these LLMs have been uh, created. So they are always going to be prone to creative answers. They're going to try and give the best, most authoritative sounding answer that they can give. So how do we actually overcome this limitation of LLMs? Um, as I mentioned earlier, here, for example, if we look at Claude with a RAG, first of all, let's take a step back and understand what is RAG. So the challenge that we have with LLMs is that they can't reference, for example, your organizational documents. Um, the LLMs have not been trained on those. So if you want to build a chatbot that answers questions specific to your policies, your procedures, or whatever is your problem statement in mind, LLMs may not do a very good job of it. In fact, they may, if they don't have access to that information, they will fail. They will have no context to be able to answer those questions. But the way that you do that is that you use a concept called RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation. Retrieval Augmented Generation is a slightly complicated term, but what it basically means is that on top of the LLM, I add a layer of my contextual information. And then the way I do it is using vector databases. And we've started to move beyond RAG as well, but RAG forms a very core capability of building AI apps. So one of the questions you could ask is your vendors is, how are their RAGs built? What techniques have they used to ensure authoritative answers from their um, RAG setup. And so one of the easy ways to play around with RAG is this app called Notebook LM from Google, which I absolutely love. And they have a bunch of notebooks already created. Here are some very cool things that you can do. So for example, the same question, I have created a Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a RAG. So anything that I upload here uh, operates as a retrieval augmented generation system. Let's ask the same question to Notebook LM and see what is the answer that we get. And so actually the answer is correct. While does not explicitly define a version, it sets requirements. So this is like the almost the perfect answer that you would expect from a consultant app. And the best part is that it also gives me the references to where it is finding that source information from. So I can click on this and it gives me the source from where it's picking up that information. There are lots of cool things that you can do with Notebook LM. For example, when I was prepping for my Azure security exam, I can discover a bunch of sources based on a topic. It will go and auto discover those sources of information. If you like them, you can add them, and then you can ask it all sorts of questions. You can also ask it to create a kind of an audio overview podcast, so it can do that as well. It can also create an explainer video from all of this content, can generate a pretty cool mind map. And this is a latest feature they've added where you can create a lot of different types of reports from all of this documentation. So Notebook LM is a great way to start building your familiarity with RAG. And if you want to like go deep dive into any particular topic, this is one of the best tools that I've found. Let's check out our NIST AI example. So I have included here a lot of sources of information around AI risk management, not just the NIST standard NIST framework, but also the EU Act on AI. So there's a whole bunch of sources of information. And now, if we ask it the same question that we asked ChatGPT, just copy paste, so there is no bias. So what we're expecting is that it should reference Gov 1.6. It should give those references. It should give the exact requirements for which it does. So it exactly jumps to 1.6 for inventory requirements, gives me the references, and then talks about what exactly the requirements are, exemptions, what should be the entries, provenance information, known info. So you can see the answer is A, extremely authoritative. It is grounded in the right sources and it gives you a reference to where it is reading up all of this information from. So I would strongly encourage that for a lot of your uses, you might find Notebook LM is the right answer. Again, you can generate an audio overview, you can generate a video overview, mind map, etc. And it's pretty brilliant. So let me see if I generated a video. This can take a few minutes to generate, but so strongly encourage you to use Notebook LM as a source. Now, just to round off this topic of, and so for this reason, we actually built an app called what we call the Consult app. This Consult app has, again, it's a hyper um, polished RAG, which we have trained, tested, etc. And then it can answer. So for example, let's ask the same question to our RAG. And this forms the fundamental basis on which all our apps work. So it is this RAG technology that forms the basis of how our agents operate. It's only when they have authoritative sources of information which are gathered from curated documents that we can rely on trust on their output. So this answer is still being formulated actually. And it's very interesting because there is a challenge response mechanism that we have built in. So this answer will actually get challenged internally by multiple GPTs till we get the right answer. So we'll give it a few seconds. Uh, so the corrected answer now states that PCI does mandate strong cryptography to protect sensitive data. Older versions are deemed insecure and should not be used, but it is not saying that a particular version is mandated. The protocol in use must support only secure versions and configurations and does not support fallback to use of old versions. And then it gives again the references that from where these answers have been picked up. And so that's precisely what we want. We want these kinds of authoritative answers. We do not, for example, want authoritative sounding but absolutely wrong answers like this, which talk about a specific version. And that's how we try and counter the predilection of these LLMs to hallucinate. I hope you found this useful, and we'll explore more in the next session. Thank you for watching.